Dear friends, thank you for to be here and continue with our group meeting today in our agenda with a very, very important topic. As you know, our role with the civil society to build a better and fairer Europe is essential. And for this reason, we wanted to introduce in our group meeting important debate with the civil society and with our dear Commissioner Elena Dalli to speak and debate about gender balance and equal opportunities with all this civil society. I want to thank our dear friends who will participate as a guest in this debate. And after we will have the opportunity to open the debate with our members. Creo que es importante y lo hemos planteado.
Well, as we've said several times during this week, I think it's crucial that Europe needs to have social democracy leading the debate on the priorities that are crucial for the European Union. So equal opportunities, gender equality, these are some of our battles. I mean, it's no surprise that the Commissioner for Equalities is a person like Mrs. Dalli, who has a real commitment to equal rights and the rights of everyone. So it's pretty clear to me that we're leading this policy within the European institutions and also right across the European Union. I mean, the debate on the state of the Union showed a lack of perhaps clear compromises in the areas that we want to see them: economic governance, implementation and development of the social pillar. But the President of the Commission nevertheless did bring across a commitment to establish a European law against gender violence, and I think that is a massive success of our political family. It's a success for all of you who have been talking about the need to make progress on that for years now, so I think we can be very pleased with that. I don't want to speak at any greater length so that all of you have the opportunity to speak. So what I'm going to do now is give the floor to our dear Commissioner Elena, so that she can make an initial intervention, and then I'll give the floor to the organisations that are here with us today to take part in this important debate. Elena, please.
Thank you, Rajan. Good morning to you all and welcome. It is really a pleasure to have around me here in my home country, European friends and Maltese civil society organizations with whom I have worked very, very closely for many, many years. And what we all have in common here today is the aim to achieve a union of equality, where women and girls, men and boys, in all their diversity, can thrive, lead, and be free. So I thank the S&D Group for hosting their meeting in Malta, for their political priorities on equality files, and continuous support on the proposals which I have been mandated with. So since the launch of the Gender Equality Strategy, we put forward its first key deliverable, a proposal for a directive on pay transparency. 60 years after the principle of equal pay was enshrined in the treaty, we have not yet succeeded in combating pay discrimination in Europe. This is why the proposal for a directive has two clear objectives. First, empowering workers to enforce their right to equal pay by giving them the necessary information and strengthening enforcement mechanisms. And second, addressing the systemic undervaluation of women's work at employer level. So the input received from civil society organizations trade unions and stakeholders in the consultation process helped us to shape an ambitious but balanced and realistic proposal. So your support will continue to be important in following the negotiations in Council and monitoring its implementation once adopted, exchanging with your representatives at the European Parliament on priorities and concerns on this file, increasing awareness on gender pay discrimination. So if you want to make a change, we need to start a process that brings about a mind shift in the workplace. The pay transparency proposal is an essential building block along the multifaceted approach the Commission is taking on closing the gender pay gap. The proposal contributes to strengthening women's economic empowerment, which we know is particularly important, especially in the context of the COVID-19 recovery. So tackling gender-based violence is our second key deliverable of the gender equality strategy. President von der Leyen has made this very clear since the start of her mandate, and again in her State of the Union address 2 weeks ago. The increase in gender-based and domestic violence during the pandemic has further underlined the need for urgent action to support victims. So in December, the Commission intends to adopt a legislative proposal to prevent and combat gender-based violence and domestic violence, and it will have the same objective as the Council of Europe Istanbul Convention, ensuring that EU member states have effective measures in place to prevent and combat violence against women and domestic violence. At the same time, the Commission will propose to include hate crime and hate speech on the list of Eurocrimes. This would subsequently allow the Commission to propose criminalizing misogynistic hate speech and hate crime at EU level. So in 2022, the Commission also plans to propose a recommendation on the prevention of harmful practices against women and launch a network on the prevention of gender-based violence, bringing together member states and stakeholders to exchange good practices. Europe needs to remain a front-runner in making Europe free from violence, where everyone is safe at home, in their close relationships, in their workplaces, and in public spaces, including, of course, online. Okay, action plan for the gender approach in the action plan for the social pillar and national recovery and resilience plans. Of course, this is a very important topic, and the EU is not just a champion on combating violence against women. If there is anything this crisis has taught us, it is that our gains in terms of gender equality can easily be lost. It is therefore crucial that when we build back, we use this as an opportunity to put gender equality at the core of the EU's recovery. And I thank again the S&D for their relentless efforts in putting equality at the core of their demands and negotiations with EU leaders and on the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility. So I welcome the fact that many member states have taken advantage of the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility to support gender equality and gender mainstreaming as part of their national recovery and resilience plans. Malta links its recovery plan to the implementation of its first gender equality and mainstreaming strategy action plan. It has also invested in infrastructure for childcare. Affordable and high-quality care services for children and other dependents is crucial for women's labour market participation. This is underlined in the EU Gender Equality Strategy and the Social Pillar Action Plan. The Commission will revise the Barcelona targets for childcare next year in order to create upward convergence in childcare services provisions, to contribute towards work-life balance policies, and to enable women to enter and stay on the labour market. Be it the Barcelona targets, the Social Pillar Action Plan, or the Gender Equality Strategy, these have all been demands and achievements of the S&D's priorities. I am counting on your insight to keep us informed about progress on the ground. The European project that the S&D family defends is one that puts all people, social progress and justice and democracy at the heart of the green and digital transition. Together we can achieve this union of equality. I thank you.
Thanks a lot, dear Commissioner. And before to give the floor our guest to introduce them and their activity, I want to say something important, because the same week where the European Commission announced this new law against gender-based violence, we have to remember that leading by our group, we could approve one report supporting to introduce the gender-based violence in the treaty as a crime. And I think that we have to insist on that because the PP decided don't support this initiative. Sometimes they try to say that they are with a clear commitment with gender policy, but this is a clear example that in the European Parliament and in the European institutions, we are the group who are leading this process. And I want to thank all of you for your work in the FEM committee, in the LIBE committee, and in other committees to do this important work. Thank you, all of you, all members who are working in this area. And we will start now with our dear guest. I will give the floor, and please, you can come here, Lara Dimitrijevic from the... Dimitrijevic from the Women's Rights Foundation. Thank you, Lara, for to be here today with us.
I hope I pronounced it well.
Lara, please, you have the floor.
Thank you and good morning, and it is a great honor to be here, and good morning, Madam Commissioner and honourable members of Parliament. I, of course, just a brief introduction, I am a women's rights activist, I'm a lawyer, but more so, I am a woman that felt with great passion I need to always bring at the forefront women's rights and equality issues in our country, in Malta. A lot has been done, but yet so much more to achieve. And I think ultimately what we always have to bear and keep in mind is gender stereotyping. And I think when coming to address the issue of gender equality, we need to look at the core. And no matter what it is, whether we're talking about gender-based violence, cyber violence, we always go back, even equality at work, gender pay gap, we always go back to the concept of gender stereotyping. And I think this has to be the main principle, the main founding principle, which ultimately, even at the European level, even the Union in itself has taken up on this, even in its formation. In the treaty, the TFU actually notes that we need to address discrimination, and with discrimination comes the stereotyping. I think COVID has highlighted many, many issues. Surely, I would say, cyber. The cyber world, where everybody was stuck in their homes, where everything happened online, we could see the harassment particularly targeted at women, female politicians, just merely people speaking up, journalists, whatever it is, the constant, I think that it just really came to the forefront. It just really then has been hammered in our faces. So that is definitely something that I think shows and continues to bring to the forefront how we need to address the equality, but within the gender framework. Definitely gender-based violence, and of course violence against women. Femicide, I would say Italy has been quite shocking. Spain also, despite, again, its advances, but we still have seen a high rise in number of femicides. Increase in reporting, even on a domestic level, we've seen the high number of reporting of police offences related to gender-based violence. And here it's very important, and again across all fronts, that we address this issue not only from a gender perspective, because it's very easy for us to use the word gender, but we have to keep in mind that it also has to be an intersectional approach. You know, the migrant woman is a woman, but she would also have experienced some form of violence or harassment also because of her position as being a migrant. So anything that is being done, anything that is being addressed needs to ensure that it has an intersectional approach. And I think also here the union has a big part to play because, as has been mentioned, you know, gender-based violence is a very serious crime. Let's face it, each and every member state of the union has some form of legislation dealing with violence, whether they call it domestic violence, intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, but it is being addressed. However, one thing that is definitely certain, it is not done in a unified manner. And it is ultimately a cross-border offense. As I mentioned, cyber violence, but let's talk stalking, you know, freedom of movement, again, a very founding principle, fundamental principle for the union, and it is natural that people cross border. So it is something that the union needs to address, and it should be recognized under Article 83 as a cross-border offense. And of course, last but not least, because for me these are all linked, and again I go back to where I started from, the gender-based violence is sexual and health reproductive rights. I think nothing more that actually brings to the forefront how there is gender inequality when it comes to reproductive rights. And here, again, COVID, what has it shown on a domestic level, I can speak on that behalf, is let's talk about access to female contraceptive pill. It is considered to be a commodity and not a necessity. But let's face it, many women and many girls need to take the contraceptive pill for health reasons, not purely, as has been stated before, promiscuous or, you know, sexual reasons. And of course, I mean, Malta continues to have a total ban on abortion. We remain the only EU member state with a total ban on abortion. I can tell you that over the last years, many years, but even more so lately, the harrowing stories that I hear, and here I speak with great passion, when I see women, families, couples, okay, having to, you know, travel on their own or live here in fear, because we know, let's face it, they are purchasing the contraceptive pill in fear that they are caught, in fear that they may be in prison. And coming up with an excuse that women have not been prosecuted is not good enough, because the trauma that we are subjecting those women and girls to is unacceptable. We say that forced pregnancy is a crime. We have codified that it is a crime. But when you have a state that is forcing women and girls into a forced pregnancy, is equally unacceptable. So here I take the opportunity once again to thank you, you know, to actually give this voice for multi-civil society. And please, we need your support. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, Lara, and you know that you can count with us in this important fight, of course. And now I will give the floor to Nikita Alamango from Nisa Laburisti.
Good morning, and once again, thank you so much for this fantastic opportunity to come and be with you here and to share our ideas and to express our thoughts. As the introduction said, I am president of Nisa Laburisti, which translates labor women within our party. And I've been involved, as also my friend Lara said, inside politics, activism, women organizations, youth organizations for the past 10 to 15 years. And sometimes I get sad or I get upset because I feel that we're running on the spot. But then I look at icons like Commissioner Dalli and I say, okay, we have to keep going because there has been so many historic women before us and men who have fought for this cause. And then I was preparing for our conference a few days back, the Labour Party conference, which took place about 2 weeks ago. And we were discussing, equality in its widest form. So we spoke about health, we spoke about disability, we spoke about violence, about the elderly and their role in society. And while I was preparing this, I was thinking, will we ever achieve? Will we ever stop? Will we ever finish? And in reality, there is no target which will be achieved and then, our work is done. Because the goalposts are always moving. Targets always change. Our ambitions always change. And that is the healthy part, that is the fun part, really. That is what excites us and what allows us to work and to continue to work day after day to achieve our goals. And I will try not to repeat what my friend Lara started off, but I will focus on rather what we have worked to achieve towards as a party, locally, across the past years. And I have been involved with the divorce campaign with my friend Cyrus Ender, who is an MEP today. Alex also, who was a part of our Labour Youth Forum back in 2011, where we, I think, really started to get the civil liberties debate going on in this country. And we moved on to access to IVF legislation, to changing the legislation twice, in reality. And we have to talk also about our local debate on access to morning after pill, for instance, which we also pushed towards in the past few years. But this isn't enough. We also spoke about equal representation, not only in Parliament, but on boards, for instance. And I think if we had to look at the Labour Party in itself in Malta, we had access to gender quotas, for instance, in our statute, but over the past few years, this has not been used anymore. And I think it's a very good study to show that, it is kind of a sunset clause where you will start off, yes, with some kind of positive discrimination, but after the mentality, the culture change, which we have to push for with legislation, unfortunately, until we get there, eventually things will fall into place. Nowadays, we do not use any of these quotas which are available, which our statute provides for, because there is automatic representation at executive level. We have a president who's female, we have a secretary general who's female, and we also have various heads of different youth branches within the party, like myself, like another think tank, which is called the DEAT, for instance. And then we go to see what has our party in government achieved. From childcare, which was mentioned by Commissioner Dalli as well, which has pushed women to get back onto the market. Tapering of benefits, maybe something that we don't really talk about, which allows people who used to be on social benefits not to have the benefits cut out immediately, but to get back into the workplace and having their benefits reduced at a slower pace, without disincentivizing work, but also without, giving that cushion, which is at the end of the day what we really believe in, since we form part of this Socialist and Democratic Party. And I think it will take time to see the changes, but I think we should be positive because we have come a long way. Yes, maybe I did start off by saying that we are running on the spot, but we also have to be positive because we have achieved, even if they are baby steps. I think baby steps are what leads to, running the marathons and going on to achieve what we actually believe to see, a more equal, and I not even say equal, I like to talk about the fact of equity rather than equality, because I believe that, yes, being equal is maybe not the right direction. We have individuals in society who need more than just equality. I get that image of people behind the fence, and some people do need a higher stool than others. If we talk about the most disadvantaged in our society, what we have seen and experienced just yesterday in the which has shocked the country, of that immigrant worker who was left by the side road, has left everyone honestly flabbergasted. And I, for one, do not want, and I am extremely ashamed, to live in a country where we are seeing this. But it is only through our reactions to such stories and our changes in legislations which will show how we can mature in this country. And this goes across the board, whether yesterday it happened to be a male, doesn't really make a difference for me. But how we come out of these situations will, at the end of the day, show how we can together grow and mature and change and finally achieve what we really believe in. I hope that also making a reference to the mechanism which will kick in our parliament in the next election will also prove to have more representation of women inside parliament. This week we also had the opportunity to have a debate inside parliament because we had a visit. And we have seen that there are so many committees with zero representation of women inside these committees because there isn't enough women MPs, and with a few others which have only 1 or 2. And although statistically that is wrong, I move beyond statistics, but at the end of the day, it means that we have a parliament which is deciding the future of women, girls, children, elderly across the board, which are all made of men. And that, in this day and age, is completely unacceptable. Obviously, we need to change just the sunset clause of, pushing more women representation is not enough. I think we need to also consider the full-time opportunity of parliamentarians in Malta, maybe childcare inside parliament, maybe the timing, the hours which parliament also works. And maybe my final comment, and in politics across the board, something which has seen maybe even through social media, the kind of attacks, the kind of nearly personal attacks we have seen on politicians across the board, which maybe social media being behind a screen gives us this sense of superiority, which leads to bullying and name-calling. We have seen this even on our MPs. And, I urge that this kind of attitude, this kind of is definitely not acceptable. And I think if we have a better, arena for politicians to discuss, and rather than attacking on a personal level, we attack a message, we disagree, we discuss. That is the beautiful side of politics at the end of the day. But definitely move away from personal attacks, moving away from stereotyping, because we've also had this, in Malta, for instance, the issue that one is a socialist and a Democrat and the labor rights, being close to being, less intelligent. And we have experienced this. I, for one, have experienced this. My opinion does not make me less intelligent. My belief does not make me less intelligent. On the contrary, I think. But everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, their own ideologies, and their own values. And we should never attack anyone for what they believe in. Thank you very much.
I totally agree, Nikita. And now I will give the floor to Rudbal Aquino from Intersex Human Rights Fund. It's an organization who are working very hard for the LGBTIQ rights and women's rights and sex work. Thank you, Ruth, for to be here today with us. And please, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to join you on this day and together with the Commission as well. My name is Rudbal Aquino. I'm an international LGBTQI activist. I'm Maltese, and I'm pro-choice. One question I'm often asked, especially by colleagues in Europe, from Europe, is how come in Malta we have marriage equality and one of the best gender recognition laws in the world, but still no access to safe and legal abortion. While we don't have time to go into the history and merits of social movements in Malta, it is essential to look at the current social and cultural context and see how movements have grown in the last couple of decades. While we have had significant legal and policy reforms related to gender and sexuality, many socio-political narratives remain rooted in heteropatriarchal rhetoric. I wanted to pick on an aspect, because we can spend the whole day talking about many aspects of gender, that I believe requires more reflection. In addressing sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equity and justice, we cannot ignore the anti-gender discourse that has permeated our movement, including women's rights movement and lesbian and gay rights movement, and in Malta and across Europe. We need to understand how the so-called anti-gender movement that flourished from a critique of gender as a social construct and its anti-abortion stance, and flourished to a mobilization that has exploded in protests across many countries in Europe in the past 10 years. As a result of this, we have experienced resistance and protests opposing same-sex marriage proposals, access to contraception, divorce, LGBTQI rights, sex workers' rights, access to abortion, sex education in schools, and gender studies at universities. In Malta, we saw the emergence of these groups in the last 15 to 20 years, starting with individuals opposing proposals coming from the LGBTQI movement around the mid-2000s, when Malta was joining the EU, and the consistent messaging and moral panic claiming that because of us, because of LGBTQI people, it will lead to many other things, and the fear-mongering about divorce and abortion was abound. We then saw that the same individuals mobilized and started forming groups opposing the introduction of divorce in 2011, as Nikita mentioned, and more recently, in the past 5 years, opposing trans rights, marriage equality, access to reproductive health services, especially for LGBTQI people, and the distribution of LGBTQI-themed books in schools. But here as well, the anti-gender discourse continued to transform itself from an anti-LGBTQI to anti-women's rights, resisting gender mainstreaming measures, objecting to the proposed equality bill, sexual and reproductive health, and the list goes on. At times, we see the same individuals and groups join coalitions and protests by right-wing populists, and while these sound too extreme, there are subtler tactics used by others who become and are part of coalitions of women's groups and other groups that come together on other issues. And I want to name here, including the current debate in Malta on sex work reform. So while the configuration may look different for different issues, there's a running link across all groups that oppose and resist these developments in our country. These tactics have sowed divisions within our movement, and as a result, we, especially LGBTQI and women's rights activists, we are finding ourselves on opposing sides when in fact we should be fighting alongside each other, especially when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Having said all that, I want to acknowledge the momentum built by pro-choice activists in Malta, particularly over the past couple of years. The increased resistance and threats towards them are proof of the necessary work they are carrying out. The heteropatriarchal system in Malta is being challenged daily by the cross-sectional actions being taken, from disseminating medically accurate information on abortions by doctors who dare to speak up, to those breaking taboos and changing the narratives, to grassroots facilitated access to safe abortion services in other European countries. We need to look beyond the rhetoric of exclusion that is dividing our movement, and instead seek to converge on narratives that connect us, to work intersectionally across social justice issues, to join forces and mobilize our communities. We also need to work with the communities led by the people most affected by the injustices and oppressions: women, LGBTQI people, sex workers, migrants, young people, disabled persons, and more. I remain hopeful that with more cross-movement mobilization and increased support by European institutions like the European Parliament and the Commission, we will see shifts towards sexual and reproductive justice in Malta in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. You introduced two important issues in this debate, very important for me, because you say that the far right is doing something here in Malta, but it's not only in Malta, it's in the rest of the Europe to take the LGBTIQ and women's right as a collective to attack us, no? And we have to be prepared for this hate speech, and we have to lead this question. Another important question, is the moment to fight together. It's not acceptable to confront our fights. We are together in this idea, LGBTIQ and women's rights. We will do it together, because together we are stronger. Thank you. And finally, to give the floor our last guest, I will give the floor to Joseph Ugeja from General Workers Union. Joseph, please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Malta. It's a privilege to be here to address Honorable Madam Commissioner, honorable members of European Parliament, delegates of the Social and Democratic parties. And as we were talking this morning, the subject, it's at the very heart and core of the values of the Workers' Union. When we talk about the Workers' Union, we're talking about the largest trade union in Malta. We're represented not just in every workplace, but also on a national level and European level. And we take these things seriously. When we want to do consultation about equal opportunities and gender balance, we're not just talking about something, a buzzword. These are the core values of the trade union movement, and we just embrace these things. We push forward on the agenda. One of my disappointments is that after 60 years, we're still talking about gender equality, gender balance, equal opportunity. We haven't learned, and it is our responsibility and our duty to push forward to leave a better place for everyone, for the next generations. And how we do that, apart from talking about it and bring forward our ideas on the agenda. Currently, the trade union movement through the Employment and Relations Board with the government, we're talking about the transparent and predictable working conditions regulation. We are not just talking about it now, we are drafting the law and how this will affect. And the main features is, because I strongly believe in education, is training. Training to educate the people to install these values in every citizen of the European Union. So everyone believes, because it's not just me, you, as the chairperson said, stronger. We are together, we are stronger. And that's the trade union movement. It's not individuals. Individuals is against the whole principle of solidarity. We are apart from training, we are going to give the right to redress to every vulnerable person who is affected by gender imbalance or unequal opportunities, or that he feels he's been discriminated. And the right of redress, the burden of proof, is on the employer to prove that he did not do it, not the employee. Because in a case like this, the employee is at disadvantage. He doesn't have the information. So the employer needs to do. But apart from that, in every collective agreement, there are clauses about equal opportunities. If I can give you a small, brief overview of a collective agreement in Malta, we don't talk about gender, we talk about grades. So if it's a delegate, a journalist, an MEP, and then the conditions according to the grade and the pay. So we don't talk about race, about religion, about female or male. It's just the grade, the value of the work against the value of the pay. And that's how, in every, even scientific studies showed that where there is a collective agreement, discrimination in pay, and imbalances don't exist, and this has been proven time and time again. We have been even opened our collective agreements for audit, because there is always room for improvement, to see if there are clauses that needs to be rewritten or readdressed. Because we believe in this, and it's not just equal opportunities or gender balance. We talk about vulnerable groups, like everyone was talking about LGBTQ. Whoever have been in a vulnerable position needs a readdress, needs to be tackled. And it's not just written laws, it is we need to believe in what we're doing. And apart from the predictable conditions, we're talking about as well on the European Pillar of Social Rights. Because we're here, so our citizens that we represent as social and democrats is, with our progressive agenda, the social rights of every citizen, how we improve the living and the well-being of society, of every citizen. The pandemic has changed this, has changed the way we view the workplace, as we live. Like everyone said, that domestic violence has increased while at work, while they're staying at home. Yes, that's true. So we need to address that, because this is a new reality. There are studies showing that while we are in favor that there is a hybrid system where people work either from home or at the office, we need to reassure that those working from home are not at a disadvantage because they are not at the office for promotion. And we talk about work and life balance. And I'm not so sure if it's a balance or integration. Because balance, you see someone juggling to fit everything in a 12-hour or 8-hour shift. But we need to make sure that opportunities are there for everyone. Those working from home and those working from the office. The opportunities for everyone. The opportunities to have a better life. And the consequences of our actions. We're talking about the right to disconnect. Because I can work at home, but if the 8 hours that I'm supposed to work now are translating to 9 hours, then I'm not working better or living better. I'm much worse. And it's not just financial. And while I'm having dinner or have a chat with my family or have some relaxing time, doing my hobbies, and I have to be connected to work, then when my work-life balance, it's not so good. And it's getting worse. Because everyone needs to be connected, everyone feels the need, and the consequence of that action is a lot of people are suffering from anxiety and mental well-being. A lot of workers are talking about this. The fact that we're talking when before it was a taboo to talk about these things, it's already a step forward, but now people and our members and our citizens expect us to do something about it. That's why in the forthcoming budget we did propose about mental well-being and how we can tackle this. Because it's affecting the lives of people. And it's not just at home, it's translating from home to work and work to home. So we need to see the whole picture holistically, at the place of work, at home, in society, in locality. And we need to talk about the vulnerable people. And people want action. It's not enough to talk about these things. People need action. That's why we're drafting laws and implementing them. But we need to change a culture about certain issues in Malta. Yes, it's a taboo, and we need to discuss this. And we need to have the mentality that, yes, we can disagree on an argument, but maybe both of us believe what's right and what's wrong, and we can talk about that. It's not that we are against each other, opponents, that there are two views to an argument. And we have changed a lot, but there are still a lot to do. And one of the main principles that it's hindering the change is culture. The culture of men and women. I don't talk about men and women, I talk about parents. Because both have to, even in the work-life balance, about parents and parental leave. I emphasized and I fought and argued that a part of the leave should be allocated just to men, and it's not transferable. So it's an obligation, and that's how you bring change. We were one of the trade unions that were in favor of quotas. It would hit? No, because we need to start changing, and we only change if it's adhered on us, if it's imposed on us, and then everyone will start believing of the benefits. And it's not just women, it's vulnerable groups, minority groups, because you hear a lot of talking. Everyone yesterday someone said it was disappointed about that migrant worker. I was angry. This is not Malta. This is not us. We were famous for our hospitality. And then you see someone who was thrown on the pavement and told to lie about what we are doing. This is not us. These are few people who are greedy. Us, we don't do these things. Never. We protect. We upbring. We renovate. We do everything to protect the most vulnerable. And we have that is just the tip of the problem. We see bolt workers or vault workers, platform economy workers, gig economy. They don't have any working rights, basic rights. They're not even called employees. They cannot be defined employees. They're just on a commission. And this new reality needs to be readdressed. And it needs to be readdressed now. It's our obligation, our duty to protect and to serve. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph, and I'm very happy to listen you when they say that conciliation is not a women's topic. I totally agree, because women know to do it perfectly well, the conciliation. We did it during all history. Now we need men's to introduce in this important topic, the conciliation. And for this is essential to work with the parental leave and insist with the no transfer leave, because if not, finally, it will be only in our hands as a women. And this is very important topic. Now we will start with the speaker leads from our MEP, but before I want to say that here with us are Carmen Samut and Josan Kutajar from other organization here in Malta. And thank you for attending today this meeting with us. If we have time, maybe after our MEPs, I can give you the floor. But in this moment, we will start with our debate. Helen Fritzson, that I know that has to leave this meeting, because I want to say that today we have different meetings at the same time, and our colleague from the FEM Committee and Employment Committee has other meeting. But in any case, thank you for being here today with us. Helen, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Irache. Yes, we have gender equality on the top of agenda today in a lot of meetings, and that's very good. And thank you, and dear Helena, for being here with us and for welcoming all of us to your Malta. Thank you for that, and thank you also to all the speakers this morning. I'm grateful for knowledge and thoughts that you have shared with us today. You represent forces that are needed to push the equality and gender equality agenda in the European Union. And we, in our S&D family, we want a fairer society for everyone, where we work together to build a more sustainable way of life. We want gender equality and a feminist European Union. So just remember, we must not forget that 1/3 of the women in our union does not work at all. So it's all about women's rights and equal opportunities. And we know that gender equal societies, they are happier, healthier, more prosperous, safe and just. And we also know that the economy grows with gender equality. Gender equality is not just for women, it is for all citizens, for women and girls, for men and boys. But we also need you, civil society, women's organizations, trade unions, and commissioner who puts equality first and helps push the agenda. And special thanks to Laura for the message, the clear message about abortion. I have said it many times before, with the current pace, it is going to take at least 60 years for a gender equal Europe. And we cannot sit quietly and wait. We need to do all we can to speed up the progress. With gender-based violence, with the pay gap, with the pension gap, and so on. And in order to do so, we need to learn from and include different perspectives, experiences, and knowledge to make the best decisions. So, as Irache said, and I will underline that, we need to do this work together on all levels to make a difference. So, once again, thank you. It's a very important debate. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Helen y Juan.
Thank you very much, Helen. When you have to leave, please don't worry. We will continue this work. This is obviously a shared commitment in this group. Before giving the floor to Josiane, I would also like to welcome other colleagues who are here, Marceline Nafti and Alexandre Dmitriev. I think he's connected. And now I give the floor to Josiane. Please go ahead.
Thank you, dear Commissioner, for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure for sure having you, all of you here, even our activists, and I'll try to be as brief as possible because I'd really like for us to have the time to give the word to the other activists present here from academia, from civil society, all of them who are great persons doing an excellent job. And I would like to start by a word of thanks to all of you here present in this room with whom I've worked in the past, with whom we're still working towards this very important subject of equality. Thank you for supporting each other, and thank you for continuing your work, even in challenging times. And indeed, when we speak of challenging times, the devastating effect on the quality of life of women, which the pandemic has left, needs to be addressed. The World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2021 estimates that there has been a step back of 39 years due to the pandemic, and therefore we cannot ignore this. We mentioned several aspects, but may I repeat these? The domestic violence increase, healthcare denial, young girls being marginalized and deprived of education, as well as a rise in mental health issues cannot be left under the carpet. And therefore, whilst it's important to focus on the economic recovery after the pandemic, as well as the vaccination, which is very much important, let's not forget the social aspect, which really needs to be addressed. We are also at the beginning of the new programming period 2021-2027, and the potential of cohesion policy can be further unleashed to live up with women's expectations, especially in the most peripheral areas of our union, and especially when it comes to the most vulnerable women. I recently worked on a report on gender dimension in cohesion policy as the SND negotiator for the Regi Committee, and I must say we still have a lot of work to do to achieve a true women empowerment, female empowerment, as budget decisions are never neutral, and therefore we should not underestimate the budget aspect. And I would like also to hear from our speakers their idea and their thoughts when it comes to utilizing the budget in a better way for more equality. We even inserted in this report the importance of this money, the EU money, being utilized for better equality even when it comes to the LGBTI community. The intersectional approach, which was mentioned, was also included, and we cannot stress this enough. And now let's build back better. And I conclude, as Ruth has stated earlier on, building back better would also link into what was said. We really need to join narratives. It's true that we may have different perspectives and different opinions, but at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that there's always a common ground for discussion and for working with each other. Let's keep the discussion going, and let's keep working towards eliminating inequality in the various fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Josiane, and thank you for your commitment with this issue in the Regi Committee. I know that you did a wonderful work to introduce the gender perspective in the regional and cohesion policy, and this is, of course, other important topic for us. Now, Maria Manuel, please.
Thank you, Irache. Thank you for the floor, and thank you to the Commissioner, Dali, for being here with us today. And also thank you to all the speakers in this morning that are fighting for so important causes, such as sexual and reproductive rights here in Malta. On her 2021 State of Union address, President von der Leyen announced plans for a new European care strategy. It is estimated that around 80% of care is provided by informal carers, and the majority of which are women, as you know. It's my view that we cannot talk about achieving gender equality, gender balance in the workforce, or equal opportunities without addressing care and its inherent gender inequalities. Could you, Commissioner Dalli, give us some more details about the Commission's plans on how to address care in the context of this newly announced strategy, and in specific, how and whether it will address both formal and informal care? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Manuel. Gabi, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your inspiring reports also on the situation in Malta here. And I have to say, I would like to start with the mentioning of these anti-gender movements. And I think what we have to understand is, and they are rising and growing everywhere, that they are anti-progress movements, especially against social progress, and fighting for the privileges of the few. And therefore, I think it's very important to have broad alliances here and to put them into context, because I think it's very important that we do not let these movements grow, because they can be quite dangerous. And this will only work if we have the right alliances here and not see it as isolated items. And I think it's very, very important, and therefore I'm very happy that Helena Dalli is here as Commissioner. I think when we talk about social justice and equal opportunities for all, one thing is very, very important, and this is that we have equal pay for equal work and for work of equal value. And I think therefore this pay transparency is such an important step. And if you look at our grandmothers who did fight for equality, pay was always in their center, and the alliance also with trade unions. And I have to say, I worked as director for equal opportunities in a very male-dominated trade union. And it took also trade unions some years and a lot of active women that they understood that it's an essential question also for their future to be the fighter for equal opportunities for all and for gender equality. And therefore, we cannot afford to lose this battle on the Pay Transparency Directive. We need really to win it, because we have to show that this social progress is possible in Europe. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabi. Margarida, please.
Merci, Irache. Merci d'abord à tous les...
Thank you, Irache, and thank you to all those who've spoken today. Since yesterday, yesterday we had the points of view of members of the government, lots of ministers, and today we've had the opportunity to see that there's a very active civil society here when it comes to promoting equality between men and women. So I think that's something we can be pleased about, something we can welcome, and we can see that there's a civil society that is fighting to tackle the challenges that we still face in our societies. I'd like to recall that equality of opportunities is an important pillar of national recovery plans as part of the RRF, and this is a challenge that we, the socialists, have been fighting for in the Economic Affairs and Budgetary Affairs Committee in the European Parliament, and this in the context of the Resilience and Recovery Fund, and also in the context of the multi-annual financial framework. And we've done our work, but it's true that national plans must respect what we demanded, we as socialists in the Parliament. But we have to be certain that these principles and projects will be respected. We organised a debate on this issue because we need to ensure that the Commission makes certain that these plans and these equal opportunities projects are actually implemented by Member States as part of the RRF. Helen took part in our workshop, and we have faith that the Commission will follow up on these ambitions. These are major ambitions, but they need to be transposed into projects on the ground. Helen, you can count on us to continue to keep our demands on the table so that these principles are respected. Thank you.
Merci, Margarida. Juan Fernando?
Just a short comment. I was impressed by the testimony we heard from women's rights activists about the situation of the debate of free choice and the interruption of pregnancy, decriminalizing the interruption of pregnancy, which is a serious matter here in Malta, considering that, according to all that we have heard and learned throughout the years, it's a very tough way ahead here in Malta because of social and cultural background. But I would like to hear a word as to the possibility of seeing change in a foreseeable future, because we have heard time and again that it's a very deeply rooted cultural issue. I would like to get to know how does it somehow reproduce itself, that cultural background, throughout the educational system, throughout the influence of the Catholic Church? Is it family values transmitted within families, or is it something else? For us to better understand, it would, I guess, interesting to get to know and get the chance that we are here in Malta and this is an issue that we are discussing. And of course, I think it would be progress in itself that those defenders, those advocates, advocating for free choice and the free interruption of pregnancy as a right of women, would not be harassed, would not be insulted, would not be discriminated against. That would be just a step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Fernando. Y ahora le voy a dar la palabra a Alex.
Now I will give the floor to Alex. But before, I want to say a special thank you to Alex for today's meeting. He's helped us organise today's meeting, and also just a big thank you for everything over the whole week. Alex and his whole team I know you have put in a lot of time and effort in order for us to have such a wonderful week here. So thank you very much, Alex, and you have the floor.
Raja, first of all, thanks a lot, but thanks to you. Thanks also to the great secretariat that we have in SND. I think that we are really lucky that we have such a great team working by our side as MEPs, but also thanks to the great, also a great team from Malta's end who helped also to set up all this external group meeting, which I believe was a successful one, especially after a year and a half where we lacked a lot of physical contact between ourselves as MEPs. So thanks a lot, Irace. Thanks for giving us the opportunity, because ultimately it was also your push to have this external group meeting outside Brussels and in Malta. Coming to the issues that we are discussing today. First of all, I am really happy that today we have a number of NGOs having an open and a frank discussion. Personally, I may not agree with everything that has been said, but I believe that the most important thing, and this is a great development that we had recently, also internally, as a party, is that today, at least, we are being courageous enough to have an open debate. And I think that that is a step in the right direction. And I totally agree with Juan Fernando that the worst thing that is happening in these debates, and this is predominantly also happening locally, is when people are then attacked personally when they have a different opinion. That is something that should not be done, and it is not being done from at a political level. So it's not being done by politicians. But it's an open discussion, and I think that we should and we must discuss these issues. When it comes to equality, as a country we have made great strides, and this is something I believe that we have to keep in mind. We're speaking about Malta. Malta, a country where until a few years ago, to discuss divorce legislation, it was still a taboo. And if it wasn't for this party, who campaigned heavily for the introduction of divorce legislation in Malta, with the church authorities being very vociferous against our campaign, we definitely would have not been in this stage that we are in today, having Commissioner Helena Dalli, who was Minister for Equality, introducing one change after the other, topping the ILGA list, making great strides. And we did this not for tokenism, for having minorities which basically are used as tokens for these reforms. So we really believed in these reforms. We really believe that equality should be a top priority. And if we look at where we have arrived today, I think we have, when it comes to equalities, with the introduction now of quotas, to have more women representation in Parliament, as Nikita has rightly pointed out, and all the reforms that we did, I think it was, we did great strides in this regard. But my last points, I also want to focus on what Joseph from the General Workers Union has stated, and I want to focus also a bit because I work directly on a number of legislative proposals dealing with the realities that the digital transition is basically transforming the way that we work. And I think that as a political family, as a political group, as we did during the past months, we should and we must continue to push for the pay transparency register. We must continue to push, although we're still finding obstacles from the Commission. And I appeal also to Commissioner Dalli to continue to push within the College of Commissioners when it comes to the right to disconnect. It's really important for our socialist commissioners to be united on this and push forward for this, because this is one of the biggest priorities for our group, But again, we should also continue to push for legislation when it comes to teleworking, but also legislation to protect platform workers. We should never accept the fact that we end up with two different sets of rights, a set of rights for traditional workers and an inferior set of rights for platform workers. I think we should be ambitious and we should continue to push in this direction. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Alice. Cyrus, por favor.
Thank you, Irache, and I would like to thank you personally for making a huge statement by wanting to have this discussion here today on with women's rights organizations and activists, because it is a I know how much important this issue is for you, and it is for many of us. So I thank you for that, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here with us, and for all the people who are here with us from the different civil society organizations here in Malta. I could speak on a lot of topics today and discuss different issues. However, I would like to confine myself to speaking only on one, which I am really happy to have seen that we used to many a times call it the elephant in the room. No one discusses it and everyone hides away from it here in Malta. But I'm really happy for people like Lara, like Ruth and others who are speaking out and in a strong voice on safe and legal abortions also in Malta, and the situation here in Malta that desperately needs to change because it is unacceptable, I believe, to have legislation that goes even beyond what one might think. I am, as you know, I always speak in pride of my country and of the big successes and advances that we have made in various areas, whether be it economy, LGBTIQ rights, social justice, etc. But on this topic, unfortunately, we really need a push, and we really need the Socialist and Democrat parties all across the European Union to help us here to bring change. Because the current situation is not just that does not allow safe and legal abortion for those who need it, but also criminalizes those who go and have an abortion abroad. Our laws currently do not permit women to go abroad to have their right for their full bodily autonomy. And we had a case only some months ago where a man went to court to stop his partner from traveling abroad because she was pregnant, and there was the thought that she might have been going abroad for abortion, and the courts took her passport not to allow her to travel. So this is the reality we are speaking about, and this is something that we really need to be strong about and speak about this, because it is unacceptable to have such women being denied their right to free movement simply because they are pregnant and that their partners or husbands might think that they are going abroad to get a safe abortion. So I think that we really need to work hard on this topic. I'm happy that we are discussing it, and I'm really happy that 2 weeks ago in the European Parliament, in the plenary, we voted on a resolution that speaks on gender-based violence, and it also includes the fact that denying the right to a safe abortion for women is gender-based violence in itself. And I think that the only way that we can change things in Malta, Juan Fernando mentioned, but how does this happen? Why is it that we have moved so much forward on many issues, but on this issue we're still lagging behind? Is it the church? Yeah, probably the church has ingrained in so many of us the philosophy, the belief that each and every one of us needs to carry his cross, or their cross, as Jesus carried his cross. However, today, there are options available for everyone. There are human rights that should be given to every single person, irrespective of who they are. And we need to make sure that those rights are given to all, be they women, migrants, LGBTI community, whoever we are speaking about. And probably, Juan Fernando, the biggest problem that we have is populism. Populism over here in Malta by everyone. And I am speaking honestly, populism by people from politicians all across the board, even from our party, because each and every one of us is afraid of not being elected in the next election. So what? We are not elected. I don't give a damn. At the end of the day, what I care about is human rights, and that every single person is able to live their life to their full potential. And I think this is where the Socialists and Democrats need to come in. We need you here in Malta with us, not only today, but all throughout the coming years. Ruth mentioned one very important thing. She said that we need to unite together. I remember 10 years ago, people used to tell me, it will be impossible for you to bring about changes for the LGBTIQ community. We did not give up. We spoke, we changed things, and today we are the champions of LGBTIQ rights in Malta. So I invite you, Nikita, as well, because I know what you believe, I know what your feelings are, and I invite all other candidates from the Labour Party who are contesting the elections very soon. Let's join together. Let's not leave one person alone or two people alone. Let's speak, because this is something very important. We cannot allow what is happening to women today in Malta to keep on happening. One last thing, I'm really happy that Belgium yesterday confirmed that it will be, it's the first member state to be financing the travel to Belgium for women in Poland who need an abortion and are being denied the rights in Poland. I hope that they do the same for Maltese women, because even Maltese women need that. The rich ones are lucky enough to be able to buy tickets to go to London, to go to Italy or anywhere else. But people who do not afford in Malta need that access as well. And let's make sure that Belgium and hopefully other member states join in to help Polish and Maltese women. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Cyrus, a lot. Robert, please.
Yeah, I'm also impressed of Cyrus' speech. It's very much needed, Cyrus, and we need courage to say things clearly and not to pretend that we don't see some things. And I'm very glad that today we are meeting all of these brave activists with the leader in the front. The Helena leadership changed Malta, and we were waiting for the change in Europe, because we still live in Europe of inequalities, and Cyrus and many of the distinguished guests have addressed it very clearly to us. And I come from Poland, and I wait for this change very long. And I remember when we were entering European Union with all these dreams that we enter Europe where we will feel safe and protected, and look what we have today. Women have less rights in today's Poland than they had in 2004 when we were entering. LGBTI people have less rights in Poland than we had in 2004 when we were entering European Union. 30% of my country is LGBT-free zone in today's Poland, in today's Europe. You cannot buy day after pill anymore in today's Poland. This is the reality. Of course, if abortion had men, then you could do abortion and buy this day after pill in every grocery shop. But this is not men's case, as we all know. So we see the clear pushback in the rights. We see the backlash in the rights. And we as progressives, we should have answers for that. And we should be brave in addressing these answers. And that's why we should demand more. We should demand not only all the issues mentioned, but we should have clear proposals for the citizens of Europe that finally they will have equal rights wherever they live in European Union. Because what is the reason that Maltese or Polish women have less rights than Spanish or French women? Tell me the reason, why? What's the objective reason not to limit the Polish or Maltese or any other rights, citizens? So and this is the place where we should discuss it, and I ask you, Irache, to provoke these discussions, and I know you are brave enough to do it, and thank you for today's discussion. We should discuss, finally, proposals of the European Charter for Women's Rights, a catalogue of rights which offers the equal rights for women all around European Union. Because what we have today, it's not enough. And it's the same with LGBTI rights. I work and I fight for LGBT rights for a very long time. And I was in Council of Europe, and they produced hundreds of resolutions, hundreds of conventions and treaties concerning postal pigeons, quality of waters, whatever you can imagine. But there is no single charter or convention concerning LGBTI people. What is the reason? The reason is a lack of our, we are not brave enough to do it. The political fears, calculations are stronger than this. So this is a momentum where we as progressives, we should propose European Charter of Equality for LGBTI plus people, and we should push for that. Because this is the momentum, and this is what people in European Union are waiting from us. Who if not us? If we talk about Europe of equality, this is our responsibility as progressive forces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Lina, please.
Yes, thank you, Ratchet. Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I'm very concerned about what Cyrus and Robert were saying, but I will not insist on that. Since I'm very concerned too with the transitions we are facing, we say, of course, that we want just transitions and that we don't want to leave anyone behind. But I'm wondering if we are doing enough in order that these just transitions are also just transition for women, having in mind that we are not present in those sectors, both sort of in green and digital sectors, that are the ones leading this transition. So, and I wonder if we are really doing enough, either because they are going very fast or because they are receiving a lot of, a big percentage of our funds. And we really designing this just transition also for women, because we are not also designing another transition, a new organization of care. Care still remains a task, a women task, and if we do not face really very seriously this new organization of care, we will continue to get in a different way and evolve in a different way within the labor market. They will expect different things for us. They will condition our choices and our freedom at the end. So my question, Commissioner, is we are really doing enough in this just transitions from an agenda perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the last speaker, Domenic, please.
Thank you very much, Irache. I'm going to be very brief, but before I like to say that as my Spanish colleagues know, I was not able to board a plane early this morning, but now I'm very happy because I'm very moved after being able to hear what Cyrus said. On the question I wanted to ask to our colleague from the workers' movement, colleague Bujeja, you mentioned the European Pillar of Social Rights, and this is very important for us. And one thing of moving this forward is to incorporate it into the Treaty of Lisbon, so it's on the same level as the market freedoms. But Pedro Silva the other day was reminding us, and me, I had forgotten, that the Maltese government had signed a letter saying that, letter with other governments saying that it was against any changes into the treaty or any improvements into the treaty. So I wonder if you have an opinion on that, because as you know, the union movement at the European level is asking for the Social Progress Protocol and the European Pillar of Social Rights to be in the treaty. this is something we can maybe achieve with the conference on the future of Europe. So what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Domenic. And finally, Evelyn could be with us in this moment, and I will give you the floor. Evelyn, please.
Thank you so much. We just had the FAM committee parallelly. They are therefore coming a little bit later. So simply, Helena, you're doing an excellent job, and it's really a pleasure to work with you together as a commissioner. I just would like at the end of this, because I was just coming in when Sarah was talking, and so much has been said right now on abortion, and it's great that it has been said. I mean, we are the socialist group. We are winning elections, and when you just look at the landscape at Europe, so somehow we can push the agenda right now. Let's be more offensive. There are all those terrible political groups who put us on the defensive, and I think right now is a good moment to say, when we talk about the future of Europe, the future is female. Yeah, our Europe is female, and when we do that, it will be human, and therefore all these issues had been presented right now is something we can do even far more offensively. Gender pay gap, great proposal on the table. Let's really fight it. Let's really do that. Women on board, somehow very hidden. Why not to push it again? And therefore, my last thing, the question to you, Helena, the care deal. We know that what is happening in Europe more or less is a provocation, especially for women, those being responsible for caring around, and that we are living in these times. So what are your ideas, to be a bit more concrete, on the care deal, where we can really put in progressive handwriting of our group? And I think, I mean, it's really great to have Irache and Helena right now here together. I think this is really an issue for our whole political group, and therefore I think it's also a good moment.
Thanks a lot, Evelyn, and thanks for your work as a president of the FN committee and your cooperation with the European Commission and with our commissioner. Elena, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, and I want to thank you all for your commitment and for working with me. I always say that the Parliament is a very important arm for my work, because you are closest to our citizens, and therefore speaking to you and consulting with you, which I do regularly with Parliament, gives me more support in what I am doing, because I can say, listen, I have spoken with parliamentarians, I have spoken with civil society. The parliamentarians really have their hand on the pulse of their citizens, of your voters, and therefore for my formulation of legislation and of policy, you are indispensable for this, and this is why I keep this very strong rapport with you parliamentarians. So, with regards to the comments made on care, this will be a package whereby we shall be revising the Barcelona targets. Well, I want to say that the pandemic shone a light on care, and we strongly believe that people working in care deserve much more than applause, which we were giving during the pandemic. But concretely, how are we supporting men and women, those who work in the care sector, and also those who want to find the best care and the best work-life balance? So with Commissioner Schmidt, we are working on the working conditions of care workers, and also this package will be looking at, and is looking at, the gender equality strategy and at the disability strategy, and as I said earlier, on the working conditions of care workers, but it will be a care strategy with a strong care dimension. As you know, many women work in this sector, and therefore it is important that this package has a strong gender dimension. So we shall be tackling care holistically, like child care, elderly care, disability care. And we're also looking at the growing employment potential in this sector. There will be a revision of the Barcelona targets in terms of childcare, and it will be something concrete, obviously, because this is about our lives. Care is about when everything, all the stages in our lives. Like we start with wanting childcare, and eventually we will need elderly care for our parents. If there are persons with disabilities in our families, we will need that. So care is all around. And as we have seen, when something extraordinary happens, such as the pandemic, it is the care sector which we need to rely on, and therefore this will be a very important package. With regards to SRHR, we know that this is part of our gender equality strategy, but it is also member state competence, and I'm very glad to see that there is a debate going on now. And as the Prime Minister mentioned also at the opening of this forum, that this debate is happening, and as we could see here. With regards to the just transition, like with the recovery plan, our task force, as you know, we set up a task force for equality. It's not just for gender equality, but for equality. And this task force is present at the inception of, at the very beginning of work on policy, work on legislation, so that the equality perspective is always focused upon. So in the transition, we have put in this equality perspective, and the gender perspective is definitely there when we were looking at, for instance, energy poverty. We know that it is mainly women who are mainly single parents, for instance, or elderly women who end up in energy poverty, and therefore we had to look at this and put it in perspective when we were working on the just transition, like the conditionalities which we put in the recovery program, that the gender perspective and the equality perspective is to be regarded by all member states. So the Equality Task Force is doing a lot of good work, because in this way equality is mainstreamed in all of our work, not just the work of the Equality Commissioner, but the work of all commissioners, and so all the work in policy, all the work in legislation has this perspective, this equality perspective, from the very beginning, from the initiation of an idea. So, and then it's filtered up and part of all that we are doing. So it's not like we have a policy or a legislation and we are discussing it, and then all of a sudden we say, but the equality perspective is not here. Somebody has been left out of this. No, it's at the very beginning, when we start working on someone, when any commissioner starts working on something, there's this task force which is looking and seeing that the equality perspective is in this policy, in this legislation. So that is a sure way of having equality mainstreamed in all the work of the Commission. So I thank you again for your work and for helping me in my work by giving me the support in the sense that when something is lacking, and I know that there's Parliament which will say this should be more ambitious, this should be stronger, and there we can reach the medium then between Council and Parliament and Commission, so that we can have the best, the strongest, the most ambitious that work that we can present in the interest of our European citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Commissioner. And you will continue counting with our support. You can be sure. We know that it's essential for our political family. Y siento no poder continuar con las palabras.
Sorry, we cannot take any more speakers. We do need to conclude the meeting. Let me conclude with a number of thank yous. So firstly to Alex and to all of his team, to all of the Maltese delegation, to the volunteers who have helped make this event possible. A big thank you to the European Parliament staff who have helped us to organise this conference, to be able to do this in a hybrid way as well, so that the colleagues in Brussels have been able to follow our work as well. I would like to thank the personnel from the conference centre. The chair kindly thanks the interpreters. It would be difficult to do this without you. And thank you to all of the staff from the S&D. I know that for all of you it was important to be able to have this group meeting outside of Brussels after the pandemic. I am sure that we will continue in this vein. We are already working on the next event, and I'm sure we will get even more colleagues who weren't able to come this time. But I think we will really take everything we've learned from this meeting and take it forward. So thank you very much for the constructive spirit, the enthusiasm, the meetings, the debates, for everything. I think today I can really feel proud to be part of this political family, and we will meet again next week in Strasbourg. So enjoy the rest of the day.